The twin suns had just dipped below the horizon when Jack arrived at the edge of the scrapyard. He worked as a mechanic for the border station, fixing broken transport ships and junk haulers. It was quiet, here too quiet for a place near the trade routes. Then he heard it, a rustle, a faint thump, and the sound of something metallic clattering. Jack slowly turned his head, holding his breath. Near the old container pile, something moved. He picked up a flashlight and shined it toward the sound. That's when he saw her. She was big, almost 7 feet tall, curled up behind rusted crates. Her grayish-purple skin was covered in dirt, her clothes torn and too small for her wide frame. She wasn't just tall, she was thick, with strong arms and heavy legs. But what caught Jack's attention was her face. Big golden eyes, filled with shame and fear, stared back at him. "Don't shout," she whispered. "I'll leave, Jack." Didn't shout, he just looked at her quietly, then turned off the flashlight. "You hungry?" he asked, calm as ever. She hesitated, her stomach growled in reply. Jack pointed to his shed. "There's soup inside." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she stood up, and he realized just how big she truly was. She hunched her shoulders as if trying to make herself smaller, but even like that, she looked like a walking mountain. She followed him inside, careful not to knock anything over when she sat down. The old chair creaked under her weight. Jack placed a steaming bowl of soup in front of her. She stared at it like it was treasure. "My name's Jack," he said, sitting across from her. "What's yours?" She looked away. Jack waited as she ate, slowly, like she wasn't sure if it was real. When she finished, she wiped her mouth and said softly, "You shouldn't be kind to me." Jack frowned. "Why not?" Kari lowered her eyes. "Because I'm not. I'm not what people want, not even in my own tribe. They said I'm too big, too strong, not soft, not desirable, not breeding material. They left me behind after the trials, called me a beast." Jack leaned back, watching her carefully. "To me," he said slowly, "you look like someone who survived." Kari blinked, not understanding. Jack stood up and grabbed a blanket, placing it around her shoulders. "You can stay here tonight. No one will bother you." She looked down at her massive hands, her voice shaky. "Why would a human help someone like me?" Jack shrugged. "You looked cold." She stared at him for a while, then whispered, "You're strange." He grinned. "So I've been told." That night, Kari slept in the corner of the shed, curled up on a makeshift bed. Jack stayed nearby, working on a damaged comms unit, but every now and then he glanced at her. She looked peaceful in her sleep, like a mountain resting. Safe for the first time, the next morning, the village market was buzzing. Word spread fast. Someone had seen the giant unwanted girl near the human's place. Locals gathered outside Jack's workshop, shouting insults, calling her a freak. Jack came out and stood between them and the shed. Arms folded. "She's not hurting anyone," he said. "Get lost." An alien merchant sneered. "She's a failure of her kind. Useless. No one wants her. Why protect garbage?" Jack's eyes hardened. "I fix junk for a living," he said. "And sometimes, junk turns out to be gold." The crowd grumbled but slowly left. Inside, Kari sat in the corner, her hands trembling. "I heard them," she whispered. "I always hear them." Jack crouched beside her. "They don't know you," he said. "Duh. But I'm starting to, and I think they're wrong." Kari looked at him with wide eyes. "No one's ever said that to me." Jack smiled gently. "Then it's about time someone did." Outside, the suns rose again, but inside that old shed, something new had begun. Not a romance yet, not a bond, but the first spark of warmth in a girl who had never been wanted. And a man who saw more than just her size, he saw her soul. Jack's shed smelled like oil, rust, and old machines, but that night, it smelled different. A faint scent of cooked soup still lingered, and in the corner, Kari lay curled under a blanket. She barely moved, her large body shivering even in warmth. Like her mind couldn't believe she was safe. Jack stayed up late, fixing an old plasma coil, pretending not to watch her. But every time she twitched or whimpered in her sleep, his hands paused. He'd never seen someone so big look so small. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the cracks in the wall. Kari sat up slowly, blinking like she wasn't sure where she was. Then she saw Jack across the room, quietly pouring water into a kettle. "You didn't throw me out," she said softly. Surprised, Jack looked back at her. "Should I have?" She hugged the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Most people do." Jack didn't answer. He just handed her a cup of hot water. "No food yet," he said with a tired smile. "Ran out last night, but I'll find something." Kari took the cup carefully, her huge hands dwarfing the mug. She stared at it, then whispered, "Your things. I might break them." Jack chuckled. "Then I'll fix them. That's what I do." Her lips moved slightly, unsure if it was safe to smile. She didn't yet, but she held the cup tighter, warmth finally reaching her fingers. Later, Jack stepped outside to visit the trade post. He didn't tell Kari to stay hidden, but she did anyway. Curling up in the same corner, she didn't want to be a problem again. When Jack returned, he brought back a small sack of bread and some dried meat. Kari blinked as he handed her the food, then whispered, "You spent credits on me." Jack shrugged. "You need to eat, but I'm not yours," she said quietly. "Why help me?" Jack looked at her with calm eyes. "Because you're not trash, Kari. You're someone that made her turn away." Trying to hide the tears forming in her golden eyes, later that night, a thunderstorm rolled across the plains. Kari flinched. At every boom, her memories flashing back to nights in cages, ships, and dark cells. Rain pounded on the tin roof, and she huddled deeper into the corner. Jack noticed her trembling and stood, walking over with another blanket. "You okay?" he asked. Kari hesitated, then shook her head. "I'm used to sleeping on cold floors." She whispered, "I'm too heavy for beds." Jack didn't reply. He walked to his workbench and started moving tools. Then he stacked crates and laid down cushions, building a platform wide and strong enough to hold her weight. When he finished, he stepped back and said, "Try that." Kari looked at it like it was a trap. But Jack just returned to his chair and sat down, pretending to fix a circuit. Slowly, she approached the makeshift bed. She tested it, expecting it to collapse, but it didn't. Carefully, she lay down, her body finally stretching out comfortably. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't curl up to hide. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack didn't look at her, but his voice was soft. "You deserve comfort, Kari." She stared up at the ceiling for a long time, then said something she hadn't said in years. "I don't remember what being wanted feels like." Jack turned toward her, his voice low. "Then stay here," he said, "and maybe you'll remember." The storm outside got louder, but inside the shed, the air was quiet, safe, and warm. Kari closed her eyes in for once. Her mind didn't race with fear or shame. Her heart beat slow, steady, and calm. That night, she slept without trembling, not because the world had changed, but because, somehow, one human made a place where she belonged, and she didn't know it yet. But her journey was just beginning. The morning sun spilled over the scrapyard, painting everything gold and quiet. Jack rubbed the sleep from his eyes and reached for his coat, but something felt off. The corner where Kari had slept was empty. He stood quickly, looking around the shed. "Kari," he called, but no answer came. The door was slightly open, letting in a soft breeze. Panic hit his chest like a hammer. She had left without a word, without a sound. Jack grabbed his boots and ran outside, his eyes scanning the piles of metal. and Rust then, near the edge of the broken crawler Rex. He saw her curled up behind a large crate, hugging her knees. She was shaking. Her back turned to him, Kari, he said softly. Walking closer, she flinched, but didn't move. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have stayed. Jack crouched beside her, heart heavy. Why'd you leave the shed? I had a dream, she said, her voice cracking. In it, I was in a warm place, and someone held me. Someone said I mattered, but it was just a dream. I didn't want to wake up in your space and forget I don't belong there, Jack. Was silent for a moment. Then, without asking, he gently reached out and pulled her closer. Kari stiffened. Afraid to break him, but he didn't let go. I don't care how big you are, he said softly. You belong with me. Kari's breath hitched. You don't know what I've done, where I've been. Jack looked her straight in the eyes. I know you're scared, he said, but I'm not. You're not a burden, Kari. She closed her eyes, letting herself lean into him. For the first time, someone's arms wrapped around her without hesitation, without fear, without disgust, and something inside her broke, not in a painful way, but like a locked door finally opening. They sat like that for a long time, until Kari whispered, I was told no one would ever want me. Jack smiled faintly. They were wrong. Later that day, Jack worked on repairing an old Cums tower near the back of the yard. Kari helped careful. Quiet, never fully relaxed, but when their hands brushed while lifting a metal beam, she didn't flinch. She just looked at him, curious. Like she was still trying to understand why he was kind. At sunset, they sat together on the roof of a half-buried transport ship. Kari watched the sky turn orange and purple, her big frame curled beside him. I never thought someone would sit beside me like this, she murmured. Jack didn't answer with words. He just handed her a small flower he had found near the desert edge. Kari stared at it like it was some sacred thing. Then she looked at him. Do you want something from me? She asked carefully. No one gives without a price. Jack shook his head. Yeah, he said. I want something. I want you to believe you're not broken. Kari's throat tightened. She wasn't used to gifts, or soft words, or gentle hands, but they kept coming from this strange human. And deep inside her chest, something began to glow, a small, fragile hope. That night, as they returned to the shed, Jack pulled out a clean blanket and handed it to her. Made sure it's strong enough, he said with a grin. Kari held it, touched by the thought, but afraid to say too much before she lay down. She turned to him and asked, Jack, do you think someone like me can ever be held? Truly held? Jack stepped closer, looked up at her giant frame, and placed his hand gently on her arm. I'm holding you now, he said, aren't I? Kari's eyes widened. Her chest rose and fell like a storm was trapped inside her. But this time, it was a good storm. She slowly nodded, and for the first time, lay down without fear. Because she trusted the world, but because she was starting to trust him. Outside, the wind howled, and far off, the sound of a ship echoed in the sky. Danger still lurked, and Kari's past was still hunting her. But that night, wrapped in a blanket and kindness, she felt something she had never felt before. Not safe, not even loved yet, but held, and it changed everything. It started with dust in the sky. A long, low hum echoed through the scrapyard as a sleek alien cruiser descended just beyond the village walls. Jack looked up from the half-repaired generator, his hands still stained with grease. Kari stepped out from behind the supply crates, her eyes instantly narrowing. She knew that sound. She knew that ship. No, she whispered, voice trembling. They found me. Jack stood slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. Who? He asked, though deep down, he already knew. Kari backed up, fear gripping her chest like claws. The ones who discarded me, she said. My clan. They've returned within the hour. A group of enforcers marched into the market square. Tall, armored, and cold-eyed. They carried plasma, whips, and trackers. A smooth-voiced officer spoke into a translator. "We seek property code X9FEM," he announced. A failed trial subject, unauthorized to breed, escaped from clan custody. Jack froze. Kari's code? They didn't even call her by name. Just a number. Just a thing. "She's not property," Jack muttered, fists clenching. Back at the shed, Kari tried to make herself small. She had done this before, hiding, shaking, waiting for the cold hands to drag her away. "I should go," she whispered. "If I stay, they'll hurt you." Jack stood in the doorway, blocking her path. "No," he said firmly. "You're not leaving," her eyes filled with panic. "I'm not worth fighting for, Jack." "You don't get to decide that," he said, stepping closer. "You think I'd let them treat you like cargo?" She looked down at her hands. These hands broke things, scared others. "I'm too much for any home." Jack gently took one of her hands in his. "You fixed my heart without even trying," he said. "That's enough." The next morning, they were surrounded. The alien enforcers had tracked Kari's heat signature and surrounded the scrapyard. They shouted commands, called her by her number again. Jack came out with his hands up, but his eyes burned with fire. "She's under my protection," he said. "She's not your slave, not your mistake, and not going anywhere." The officer laughed. "Human laws don't apply to genetic rejects," he sneered. "She is clan property behind them." Kari stepped forward, standing tall in the rising sun. "No," she said loudly, her voice shaking but strong. "I was rejected not because I failed, but because I scared them. I was born strong, and that made them afraid." One of the enforcers raised a weapon. Jack stepped in front of her. "You'll have to shoot through me first," he growled. Tension filled the air. Villagers gathered quietly, watching from behind stalls and roofs. Most had ignored Kari before, mocked her, feared her. But now, they saw something else. Not a monster, not a reject. A woman standing with a man who believed in her. An elder alien from the village stepped forward. "You said she's a failed trial," he said to the enforcers. "Then by our law, she is not owned. She is free." The officer frowned. "That's not," the elder raised his voice. "Clan laws end where exile begins." More voices joined his. "She lives here now. She works, she helps, she has value." For the first time in her life, Kari heard others speak up for her. Not Jack alone, but strangers too. The enforcers looked around and realized they had no support. They stepped back, then returned to their ship without a fight. The cruiser lifted off in silence, swallowed by the sky. Kari dropped to her knees. In disbelief, she expected to be dragged away again, to be punished for simply existing. But instead, Jack knelt beside her, holding her gently. "You don't have to run anymore," he whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't understand." She said, "Why? Why do you keep choosing me?" Jack touched her face. "Because where others see too much, I see exactly enough." That night, Kari didn't sleep in the corner. She lay beside Jack. Not curled in shame, but open, breathing, alive. She didn't tremble, didn't flinch. Because for once, the world didn't try to shrink her. It let her exist. As she wasn't, she began to believe she deserved to be loved. Not in pieces, not in silence, but completely. The desert air turned cold as night fell. The wind whispered through the wrecked metal of the scrapyard. Inside the shed, a small lamp flickered, casting a soft golden glow on Kari's face. She sat near the wall, legs folded, arms around herself, not from fear, but from thought. Jack worked quietly nearby, mending an old water recycler. But he kept glancing at her, sensing something in the air, something heavy but not dangerous. Kari had barely spoken all day. She wasn't trembling, she wasn't scared. She was thinking. When he finally sat down across from her, she looked up slowly. "Jack," she said softly, Do you ever wonder, what would have happened if you hadn't found me? Jack leaned back against the wall, thinking for a moment. I don't, he replied. Because I did find you, and I'm not letting you go. She smiled faintly, then stared down at her hands. These hands. I always hated them. She whispered, too big, too rough, not soft enough to hold anything gentle. Jack moved closer, gently taking her hand in his. You held my life together, he said. That's gentle enough for me. Kari blinked, her lips trembling. Back on my planet, I was called a curse, she said. Not fit to carry life, not fit to be touched. They said my body was built for war, not love. Jack tilted his head. They were blind. He said, your body isn't the problem. Their hearts were. She swallowed hard, trying not to cry. You really see me, don't you? Jack nodded. I see you clearly, he whispered, and I want what I see. Kari's breath caught, her golden eyes wide. No one's ever said that, she murmured, not once in my life. He placed his hand on her cheek, slow and careful. You're not too much, he said. You're perfectly enough, and in that moment, the space between them melted. Kari leaned into him, certain, but no longer ashamed. When his lips met hers, it wasn't wild or rushed. It was gentle-like, opening a door that had always been locked. She let him touch her shoulders, her arms, her back. Her whole body had been a source of pain, of rejection, but now she was being held not as something to hide, but as something beautiful, wanted, loved. They moved to the makeshift bed Jack had built. It groaned under their weight, but held firm. Just like him, Kari whispered. You're not afraid I'll crush you? Jack smiled and whispered back. Then I'll die happy. She laughed softly, for the first time without shame. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might burst. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight's this night she wasn't a mistake. She was his. Later, with her head resting on his chest, she traced circles on his skin with her fingertips. I never thought anyone would choose this body, she whispered. Jack kissed her forehead. I didn't choose your body, he said. I chose you, and your body came as a blessing. She blinked through soft tears. You really mean that? He nodded, holding her closer. Kari, he said, this isn't about fixing you. You were never broken. Outside, the wind howled again, but this time, it didn't matter. Kari wasn't cold. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't hiding. She was wrapped in arms that didn't flinch, didn't pull back. She was safe. She was wanted. And for the first time, she believed it. Her body so long seen as too much was exactly enough for someone, and that someone was Jack. And though she didn't say it aloud, she knew, deep in her chest, something had changed. She hadn't just been held or kissed. She had been accepted completely. The days passed slowly, but peacefully. Kari no longer flinched at every sound. She walked through the scrapyard with her head higher, her steps lighter. The villagers no longer stared. Some even nodded when she passed. A few children waved. And Kari awkwardly at first waved back. But something inside her was changing. At first, she thought it was just peace. Settling in, then came the nausea, the strange cravings, and the aching in her lower back. She tried to ignore it. Tried to pretend it was nothing, but late one night, while brushing metal dust off her skin, she paused, her hands trembled, her chest tightened. No, she whispered, it's not possible. The next morning, Jack found her staring into the cracked mirror nailed to the shed wall. She didn't look at him, just placed a hand slowly on her stomach. Kari, he said gently, stepping closer. She blinked, then turned toward him, her golden eyes filled with fear. I think, she whispered, I think I might be carrying. Jack froze. His mind spun, but not in fear. He walked to her, placing his hand beside hers on her belly. "You're sure?" he asked softly. Kari nodded. "My kind. We feel it sooner than humans do. Our bodies change fast when life begins." Jack took a deep breath, and then he smiled. "Then we're not alone anymore," he said. But Kari stepped back, panic returning. "No, Jack, you don't understand," she said. "This shouldn't happen. My people said I was too large, too unstable to carry life. They told me I was genetically off balance." Jack frowned. They were wrong about everything else, too. "But what if it hurts me?" she whispered. "What if I can't protect the baby? What if my body betrays it?" Jack gently took her hands. "Then we face it together," he said. "Like we faced everything else." Later that day, Jack called in a favor. From an old trader friend, a medical scanner was dropped off at the edge of the yard in a rusted case. Kari lay down, heart pounding. The scanner whirred to life, buzzing softly as it moved across her belly. A few seconds passed in silence. Then, the screen blinked. "Life detected. Hybrid signature viable." Jack stared at the screen. Kari stared at him. Neither of them spoke, until Kari covered her face with her hands and began to cry. Jack rushed to her side. She didn't cry from fear. She cried from disbelief. "I'm not broken," she whispered. Again and again, "I'm not broken." Jack held her close, tears in his own eyes now. "No," he said. "You were never broken. This baby proves it." That night, the stars above looked brighter. Jack and Kari lay beside each other on the roof of an old holler. The wind was calm, the world quiet. Kari placed Jack's hand on her stomach. "I'm still afraid," she admitted. "But now?" "It's not the same kind of fear." Jack squeezed her hand. "It's the kind that comes with hope," he said. "And that's okay." Kari looked up at the stars. "I never imagined I'd be a mother," she said. Jack turned to her. "And I never imagined I'd fall in love with someone who used to call herself unworthy. But here we are." Kari chuckled softly. "I wonder what the child will look like." Jack smirked. "Hopefully not as tall as you." She elbowed him gently, laughing for real now, then paused, placing her hand on her belly again. "I'll protect this baby with everything I have," she whispered. "I'll love it more than I've ever loved anything." Jack nodded, his voice steady. "And I'll protect you, Kari, no matter who or what comes for us." But as they rested together under the stars, far away in deep orbit, a signal beeped on a forgotten relay. The hybrid signature had triggered a silent alert. The same clan who discarded Kari now saw value in what she carried. They would come, not for her, but for the child, and peace would not last much longer. The peace didn't last. Kari knew it the moment the sky changed. A dark ship broke through the clouds above the scrapyard, larger than any before. It carried the mark of her former clan. Bold and shining, they hadn't come for her. They had come for her child. The hybrid growing in her womb was now valuable proof that her kind could breed with humans. The same people who once threw her away now wanted to claim her again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Jack stood beside her as the ship landed with a roar. His jaw was tight, but his hands were steady. He looked at her not with fear, but with faith. "Whatever happens," he said, "I'm with you." Kari placed a hand on her stomach, then looked toward the gates. The village stood quiet behind them, watching, waiting. No one moved to help, but no one moved to stop her either. This was her fight now, not just for herself, but for the life inside her, and for the man who chose her when no one else dared. 2. The clan's emissary stepped forward, tall and dressed in silver armor. "You will surrender the hybrid," he said coldly. "It belongs to the clan." For research and preservation, Kari didn't speak. She stepped forward, towering over him, her golden eyes blazing. "This child is not yours," she growled. "You gave up that right when you left me in the dust." The emissary narrowed his eyes. "You were a failure," he spat. a mistake, Jack. Stepped beside her, and now that mistake carries something you want, huh? Well, two bad weapons hummed to life behind the emissary. Kari tensed, but didn't back down. I am not just a body anymore, she said. I'm a mother, a mate, and I belong here, not to you, without warning. The enforcers lunged forward, but Kari was faster. She slammed her foot into the ground, sending a shockwave through the dirt. Metal crates flew, dust exploded, and then Jack joined the fight, using an old plasma torch and his fists, 2 against many, but they didn't retreat. Kari moved like a storm. Powerful, graceful, unstoppable, she protected her belly with every blow. And Jack, though smaller, fought like a man protecting the center of his world. The villagers watched in silence, then slowly, one by one, they joined in, farmers with shovels, traders with old rifles, even children throwing rocks. Together, they pushed the invaders back. The ship's engines roared again as it lifted off, defeated, ashamed, gone. Kari dropped to her knees. Gasping for breath, Jack ran to her side, wrapping his arms around her. "You're okay," he said, over and over. "You're okay." Tears ran down her face as she held his hand against her stomach. "We kept the baby safe," she whispered. "We did it." The elder of the village stepped forward, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You've shown us something rare," he said. "Love that doesn't look for permission." Kari looked up, her face streaked with dust and tears. "I'm not what they wanted," she said, "but I became what I needed to be that night." A celebration lit the desert sky. Kari wore a long robe stitched from trader cloth. Jack stood beside her as the village sang and danced, not for victory, but for her, for the unwanted giant girl who became a symbol of strength. Under the stars, Jack knelt and placed a ring in her hand. "I never cared what the galaxy thought," he said. "I saw you, Kari, and I chose you." Kari smiled through soft tears. "You never tried to fix me," she whispered. "You just stayed with me, and I always will," Jack replied, placing a hand over her stomach. "Both of you?" The wind moved gently across the sand. And in that quiet moment, Kari wasn't a beast or a mistake. She wasn't too big, or too different, or too much. She was a mother, she was a mate, and finally, she was everything she was always meant to be. The mate she deserved, and the future she never thought she could have, now growing gently inside her.